Mr. Speaker, sir, life and politics are made up of choices which we have to assume fully, whatever the circumstances. We all realize that COVID-19 has destroyed lives and livelihoods worldwide and caused havoc to the global economy. In the face of a joint health and economic crisis of unprecedented proportions in recent history, we, as a small island state with limited resources and highly dependent on foreign exchange earnings, have been severely hit. But as a nation, we believe in our capacity to overcome the worst of situations. Our bold and proactive response enabled us to weather this sanitary crisis. Our efforts have been recognized by the World Health Organization, other international bodies, and media. Saving lives and preventing the propagation of the virus guided us all the way in our fight against this invisible enemy. Since the beginning of the crisis, we have worked round the clock to initiate prompt actions to deal with urgencies and contingencies. Our people have been and will always be our priority. We never left any of our fellow citizens unattended. This is the very essence of our DNA. Over the last 3 months, government has disbursed more than 25 billion rupees because saving lives and livelihoods cannot be priced. Mr. Speaker, sir, having managed the health crisis successfully, our focus is now on putting our economy and society on a stronger footing for recovery and for bouncing back from one of the worst crises our country has probably ever known. As I said earlier, government's approach to dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic has since the very beginning been threefold. One is protecting lives, two, protecting livelihood, and three, protecting our country's future. Indeed, the 2020-2021 budget aligns fully with government's approach and even goes beyond the COVID-19 to lay strong foundations for long-term development. As regards protecting lives, with the help of frontliners, we have been able to protect our population. And this budget has given due recognition to the hard work and dedication of the men and women who have been on the front line in the battle against COVID-19. Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, I say battle because the war is still raging in many countries across the world, and we have to remain extremely vigilant until the pandemic is totally under control globally. We will continue our efforts to bring all our citizens who are stranded in other countries and on ships back home in a safe environment. Mr. Speaker, sir, I need not dwell on the financial and economic impact of COVID-19 for our country. Both international institutions, such as the IMF, and local institutions have pointed out that this crisis would probably result in our worst GDP contraction in over a century. I would like to stress that the measures we have taken have contributed to contain the propagation of COVID-19. Otherwise, the situation would have been much worse. I don't need to highlight what is happening in other countries. It's only this opposition that does not see. Or maybe they pretend not to see. And this, the way we have managed and we have faced up with this crisis, has in turn led us to a swift and safe reopening of the country's economic activities. But we are still in a situation of deep and unprecedented economic crisis, and it will take a lot of efforts to come out of it. We have to turn around the country's economic situation and put it on a positive growth path. We have to ensure that our economy not only preserves livelihoods, but also creates jobs at a fast pace in the early post-COVID-19 years, especially for our youth. We have to make sure that our industries and businesses regain their vitality. We have to pave the way to strong, positive, long-term growth path for our economy, based on our vision for an inclusive, green, high-income country. And as a nation, in the face of this unprecedented adversity, we must move forward with even greater determination and resolve. We also have to further strengthen government finances. Mr. Speaker, sir, the task is indeed extraordinary. Many economists and local so-called experts have been expecting that we come up with a budget of austerity. This would have meant taking away social benefits and reducing our welfare state. We resisted these goals, as our philosophy as a government is to put our people at the heart of our economic strategies. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, the budget does exactly that. The budget draws lessons from the COVID-19 episode to invest and shape a more resilient economy and society. One of the very first lessons we have learned is the need to have a well-prepared, well-staffed health sector for both public and private health care. Besides providing the necessary resources for the development of the healthcare sector, this budget has announced the 5-year strategic plan for the health sector, the setting up of a National Center for Disease Control and Prevention to combat the infectious diseases, and the promotion of telemedicine that will contribute to the modernization of the health sector locally, while at the same time opening up new opportunities for export of healthcare services. The budget also promotes the development of a pharmaceutical sector to reduce our dependence on imports, while at the same time creating new and higher value-added activities in our economy. This budget is looking towards the future and preparing our economy to engage in new economic pillars. The life sciences, be it pharmaceutical production or telemedicine, are part of this strategy. Another important lesson we have learned is that we must be as self-sufficient as possible in the basic necessities of life, in particular, food and medicines. The statistics show clearly our dependence on the import of products. We actually import some 50 billion rupees of food, energy, and manufactured goods for local consumption. A large part of these imports can actually be produced in our country to fuel the growth of local production in the agricultural, seafood, manufacturing, and local renewable energy sectors. This is why this budget introduces numerous measures and incentives on the supply side, from facilitating access to agricultural land, to financing facilities, to industrial and technology parks, to markets, to shelf spaces, to quality certification. This budget indeed provides the ecosystem throughout the entire spectrum of the value chain to boost local production and reduce our imports. We aim at the development of local industries that can meet a much higher percentage of local needs for consumption goods and that maintain a high standard in terms of safety and price-quality ratios. We want our local industries to be also globally competitive and to export our products and expertise to the world. Another industry which can help to ride out the impact of COVID-19 on our economy is the construction sector. Yet, I must say that I was amazed at Honorable Reza Utim's statement that the construction industry does not have much of an impact on economic growth. I am also baffled by another statement made in this House from a member of the opposition, that growth is not ascertained through more concrete structures. The data tells a completely different story. Last year, the construction industry contributed close to 5% of GDP and employed some 44,000 persons, of whom 39,100 were Mauritians. Mr. Speaker, sir, some 39,000 Mauritians are earning an average annual income exceeding 300,000 rupees in the construction sector. And this is only direct employment. There are many more who are indirectly employed. That industry also attracted more than 1.2 billion rupees of FDI in the past 3 years. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is also a well-accepted fact across the world that investment in major public infrastructure lead to higher economic growth in the long term. We are confident that the 40 billion rupees of public infrastructure, the construction of 12,000 social housing units, and projects such as Data Technology Park in Côte d'Or and other projects will play a crucial role in creating more employment opportunities and thus generating much needed income for thousands of families in these difficult times. I also wish to stress that there are two aspects to boosting up the construction sector. One is the construction of new structures that generate jobs and investment in the short term. And the second one is the creation of maintenance jobs for years to come. This second aspect should not be underestimated, as it provides vast opportunities for our electricians, plumbers, painters, masons, carpenters, and other construction workers. Mr. Speaker, sir, despite the worst economic crisis in our modern history, this budget provides the necessary ingredients for a swift bounce back of our economy. Thankfully, our economy has, over the last 5 years, been on a strong footing, even as the world was faced with a slowdown in growth. We have been able to sustain growth of more than 3.5% annually, whilst keeping both inflation and unemployment at one of their lowest levels in our history. Inflation has been at 0.5%, and unemployment at less than 6.7%. Honorable Duval claims that last year we have had the worst economic performance in over 15 years. The honorable member, who is presumably an expert in finance, needs to be enlightened on what economic performance means. Let me start with his performance as Minister of Finance, where both total investment and private sector investment contracted for 3 consecutive years, where unemployment rate hit the 8% level, and where inflation reached more than 6%. Also, whilst the world economy was growing solidly at more than 3.5% during his tenure between 2011 and 2014, the GDP growth rate for Mauritius fell to 3.4% in 2013, less than the world GDP growth rate. Yeah. And in sharp contrast, in 2019, whilst the world economy grew by 2.9%, and faced with uncertainties such as Brexit, the Mauritian economy continued to grow by more than 3.6%. However, it seems that for Honorable Duval, 3.6% growth is lower than 3.4%. This is his mathematics. Monsieur le Président, l'honorable Paul Béranger a insisté sur l'importance de dire la vérité à la population. Pour une fois, je suis d'accord avec lui. Depuis que je suis rentré en politique, j'ai toujours été guidé par les mêmes valeurs. L'une d'entre elles, c'est justement de parler le langage de vérité. Je ne vais pas citer des exemples, mais dans le contexte de la pandémie, de la Covid-19, je me suis fait un devoir de tenir la population informée de l'évolution de la situation, ainsi que des mesures que nous avons prises. À chaque fois. Et on ne m'a pas accusé. Je ne vais pas entrer dans les détails, les chiffres, le nombre de cas de positifs, le nombre de personnes qui sont entrées en traitement, etc. Mais, Monsieur le Président, je dois dire que c'est grâce à cette transparence que la population et le gouvernement ont pu faire front commun pour contrôler la propagation de ce virus. Et ce principe qui m'anime et qui me guide m'a permis de tisser une relation de confiance avec les Mauriciens. Et c'est bien pour cela que la responsabilité de diriger le pays m'a été confiée. Monsieur le Président, je note aussi que l'honorable Paul Béranger a fait preuve d'inexactitude dans sa tentative d'analyse économique. Je ne sais pas si lui-même il s'est bien compris, je l'ai écouté attentivement. Il a pris les chiffres, l'autre chiffre, c'est un méli-mélo. Ce qu'on peut dire, il met l'accord lui-même. Il a indiqué que la prévision de la croissance économique était de 4,1% en 2020. Il confond, Monsieur le Président, l'année fiscale et l'année calendaire. Bon, il doit savoir, mais peut-être, puisque je parle et que les gens m'écoutent, il vaut mieux que je donne une explication. L'année fiscale s'étend de juillet à juin de l'année suivante, alors que l'année calendaire, comme le nom l'indique, couvre la période de janvier à décembre. Donc, la prévision de 4,1% pour l'année fiscale se terminant au 30 juin 2020. Et je rappelle que l'économie, tout le monde le sait, était à l'arrêt en raison de la pandémie durant les 4 derniers mois, soit un tiers de l'année fiscale. Donc l'honorable Béranger doit savoir, mais moi je sais qu'il le fait intentionnellement. L'honorable Béranger s'est également trompé lorsqu'il a tenté une seconde analyse économique, cette fois-ci pour l'année calendaire. Les chiffres officiels indiquent que la croissance en 2019 a été de 3,6% et non de 3,1% comme il l'a avancé. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I have said, this budget stays fully aligned to this government's pursuit of inclusive economic growth and development. I have said it many times, and I will reiterate it today. Because that is the difference between us and others. The fruits of economic growth must be more equally shared, and there must be wider participation in the economic development of our country. This is our commitment, and we will continue to be relentless in that pursuit. There is a plethora of measures and incentives to protect and support the SMEs, small planters, and also operators in the informal sector. 20 billion rupees are being injected to support the small and medium-sized enterprises and vulnerable households. And the Development Bank of Mauritius will invest 10 billion rupees in the SME sector to sustain small and medium firms at a concessional rate of 0.5% per annum. Never heard before. Mr. Speaker, sir, much has been said about the support provided by the Bank of Mauritius to government to help cushion the impact of the COVID-19 crisis, especially from the leader of the opposition. He stipulates that our reserves are barely adequate. This is the word I had to use, barely adequate. He is, I must say, he is blatantly misleading the population. In fact, in its latest Article 4 report, the IMF said, and I quote, "International reserves stand within the advisable range of the adjusted reserve adequacy metric. International reserves have improved since 2016, and at about 120% of the adjusted reserve adequacy metric are in the middle of this advisable range," unquote. In fact, at the time of the report last year, the international reserves accounted for 9.3 months of import cover. In April 2020, These reserves stood at 280.6 billion rupees, representing 12.8 months of import cover. It means that what the IMF described as more than adequate 1 year ago has further improved by more than 3 months. How does the leader of the opposition equate 12.8 months of import cover with barely adequate? Yes, I must say, during the mandate of the Labour Party, when the international reserves was at 4.9 months of import cover, then, of course, we can talk of inadequate reserves. Mr. Speaker, sir, in many other countries around the world, central banks are coming to the rescue of the economy. I need to make a few remarks in connection with this issue, because there's been a lot of what I call nonsense that have been said by the opposition. It's as if they are living in a world of their own. And they, I believe, probably they don't have satellite TV at home for them to see what is happening elsewhere. We have seen unprecedented quantitative easing in the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, India, South Africa. I can go on like that. The tools may differ from country to country, but the aim is the same: to cushion the impact of the crisis on the economy, to prevent massive laying off of people and bankruptcies, and to prevent families from sliding into poverty. We all value the protection of the most vulnerable. The situation is indeed precarious and highly risky, a never-seen-before situation. There is still a lot of uncertainty, and it is difficult to predict what can happen next. Our country and economy are in what may be the worst crisis. I repeat again, because some do not know, do not understand, do not see. The worst crisis in our modern history. Everywhere around the world, we are seeing that fiscal policies alone would not be enough. The Bank of Mauritius has, as part of its mandate, the stability of the economy. It has lived up to its mandate, and we must be thankful to the bank and its board for having taken the decision that they have. Monsieur le Président, autres que moi et nous ici, laissez-moi mentionner 2 personnes qui ont fait des commentaires. Peut-être même, si je me trompe, avant même que le ministre fasse des commentaires sur les mesures qu'on va prises pour préparer ce budget. L'ancien gouverneur de la Banque de Maurice, M. Randir Singh Binik, a déclaré, je cite, « Fondamentalement, je ne suis pas contre l'idée que la Banque de Maurice saute la planche à billets pour sortir le pays du pétrin. Nous ne sommes pas l'exception qui confirme la règle. Tous les pays le font. » Fin de citation. Et l'autre, peut-être un peu plus connu, ancien ministre des Finances, porte-parole du Parti travailliste sur l'économie, M. Ramasitanen, est allé encore plus loin, lui, en disant, et je cite, « Le ministre des Finances n'a tout simplement pas d'autre choix. » Vous n'avez pas d'autre choix, monsieur le ministre des Finances, que de dépendre des 2 réserves de la Banque centrale et de sa machine électronique de transfert d'argent pour sauver le pays d'une crise économique et sociale. Tous les pays le font. mais il l'appelle différemment. Fin de citation. Mr. Speaker, sir, this budget also reflects fully the compassion of this government. In spite of the extremely difficult economic situation, we are protecting the livelihood and improving the welfare of the most vulnerable. The budget is making the promise of providing some 12,000 families, that is some 50,000 of our citizens, men, women and children, with decent and affordable housing units. And I listened to the passionate discourse of my colleague, Minister for Housing and Land. We now need to show not only to this, I don't want to show to this opposition, but to this country that this is not going to be an effet d'annonce. We will see to it that these housing units are built and are delivered to families who need them the most. We commit ourselves to bring this housing project to reality because we know and we are deeply convinced that the quality of life of these families and their children will greatly improve. A decent housing unit impacts positively on health, on children's education, on productivity, and certainly on keeping families out of poverty. Most of all, it is about upholding the principle of this government and our values as a nation to leave no one behind in our development process. By putting our resources and commitment in this project, we are doing what is right for these families, their children, and our country. We have made it our policy priority because we know the pain and hardship that these families are facing. And we know also of the importance of having a decent home. Mr. Speaker, sir, this housing project also speaks of this government's commitment to continue building an inclusive Mauritius. And this budget does more to attain this objective. Another example is in our education system. The budget gives particular attention to special education needs children by earmarking funds for granting aid to NGOs running special education needs schools. I take this as an example, Mr. Speaker, sir, because it is a signal of what this government stands for. The budget provides for a one-off grant of 100,000 rupees to each special education needs school run by NGOs to help them improve their learning environment. In 2014, per capita recurrent expenditure for special education needs students in both public and private schools was lower than the recurrent expenditure for mainstream students by 44%. Today, the gap is only 12%. Only 12%. We have made significant progress, and we will continue our efforts to bridge that gap. That gap has already been bridged in public schools, where per capita recurrent expenditure for SEN students is even higher than for mainstream students. Mr. Speaker, sir, with the measures in the budget, we are also making more significant strides towards reducing poverty. With the measures and policies that we have taken during the last 5 years, there are practically no families in our country living in conditions of absolute poverty as defined by the World Bank. The increase in the old age basic retirement pension of almost 150% the past 6 years means that there is practically no elderly in our country aged 60 and above living in poverty. With the negative income tax and income support, there are no more families in our country living in conditions of absolute poverty. With the introduction of the minimum wage, we have improved the quality of life of many of our citizens. And we are maintaining our commitment to subsidize rice and flour to make them affordable to low-income families. We have even further reduced the price of 12 kg cylinder LPG gas in this budget, increasing the subsidy. And we are maintaining free education, free healthcare, amongst others, while at the same time investing to improve the quality of services. All this is being done at a time of global recession and deep economic crisis. In fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, the budget this year provides for an increase of 12.4% in the allocations for social protection, some 47.7 billion rupees in all. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will now speak on our pursuit of the Green Mauritius vision. This government is very conscious that global warming and climate change are the ultimate threat to the present way of life on our planet, and indeed to human survival itself. Scientists are predicting that climate change will adversely impact the world's temperatures, water cycle, air quality, and sea levels. And in Mauritius, we have all witnessed the recurring flash floods in recent years. These are symptomatic of a much bigger threat to our environment that we must address urgently. This is why this government has spared no efforts to increase financial resources to deal with environmental issues. The amount of resources allocated to environment protection has increased by 160% since 2017-2018. This year, some 3.5 billion rupees are being allocated for environment protection. It represents a 29% increase over last year's allocation. Moreover, a number of measures are being taken to encourage recycling, reducing use of plastics, the circular economy, and more optimal management of waste. Our efforts to protect our environment and improve our country's resilience against environmental threats will not stop with this budget. Mauritius is considered as one of the countries which is most at risk to the eventualities that can arise from climate change. Indeed, this budget makes a major stride to prepare for such threats. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me now address two specific issues. The first one being that of our national carrier. We have heard many comments which have been made inside and outside this House to the effect that this government is responsible for the collapse of Air Mauritius. I must say that these comments are not only baseless, but indecent, and coming from some members of the opposition. In fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, the burden lies on the Labour PMSD government that authorized and condoned the irresponsible hedging decisions of their cronies at Air Mauritius. Let me remind the House what Honorable Paul Béranger had said in 2009. I quote, "Le hedging est le turning point de la crise que connaît Air Mauritius. Il y a aussi les gaspillages, les caprices du prince, les petits copains, je pense doit inclure les copines aussi, et les abus du pouvoir." Fin de citation. And Honorable Béranger further stated, and I quote, Ramgoolam, Duval et Sitanen sont responsables du crash d'Air Mauritius. Unquote. Hedging losses, Mr. Speaker, sir, encountered by the national airline in 2008, 2009, 2009, 2010, 2014, 2015 amounted to more than 7 billion rupees. 7 billion rupees. These have been most detrimental to the financial foundation of Air Mauritius. Pre-hedging, the company had a strong balance sheet. Equity stood at 200 million euros and cash position at 82 million euros. Post-hedging, the company cash position hovered around a low of 20 million euros, and equity never passed 100 million euros. This proves that Air Mauritius never recovered from the hedging saga. And although fully aware of that critical situation in which they put Air Mauritius, the then government, the then Prime Minister, they were instrumental in having Air Mauritius acquire 6 aircrafts, almost on the eve of 2014 general elections. How many things did they do on the eve of general elections? That was, I must say, another dagger in the heart of Air Mauritius. Business class cabins were re-engineered to suit his needs, amongst others. I won't say more. Labour MPs seems to suffer from temporary amnesia when it comes to Air Mauritius. And now, what do they say? It's as if they are not aware that we are having the full impact of COVID-19. All Air Mauritius commercial flights have stopped for more than 3 months now, which equates to 0 revenue, but with the same cash outflow. There is as yet, Mr. Speaker, sir, no visibility as to when the national airline could restart commercial flights. This is highly dependent on the global situation, and clearly this is unsustainable for any airline. And we have witnessed the impact it is having on major companies like Air France, British Airways, and Lufthansa, amongst others. Others like South African Airways, Virgin Australia, are either under voluntary administration or have filed for bankruptcy. The second issue, I won't dwell lengthily because Deputy Prime Minister has, in fact, enlightened the House, has given a lot of information with regard to Central Electricity Board. Suffice it for me to say that once information was brought to the attention of government, the board acted to interdict the acting general manager of the CB. And when further information came to light, government decided to appoint a new board. Now, I did welcome the other day the move from the leader of the opposition who committed to provide me with information when he stated during PNQ that I know who are the people involved. I even know how much money has been given to who. And I waited. I lit a candle and I waited until I addressed the press when a question was put to me. Did the Honorable Leader of the Opposition provide you with information? I said, up to now, no. I'm still waiting. Anne, Monsieur Anne. After having said that publicly, that very night, the Leader of the Opposition called me. And he said, I asked him, well, I'm still waiting for your information. Why I'm saying this now? Because I see that he has put on Facebook now, he's saying, I've communicated everything to Prime Minister. Unfortunately, he's not here. I would have wished that he's here. He only told me one thing, that there is a company by the name of Padgo who is involved. That is all. That is all. Not even, the other day they were making allegations. Today they misbehave in Parliament with their placard or whatever it is. Not even any allegation against the DPM or against anybody else. He just told me that, look, Pad and Co. I said, this is all, Honorable Leader of the Opposition? I was expecting more. I was expecting that you give me names. I was expecting that you will tell me how much money has been given to whom. That is all that he has. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, I won't dwell lengthily on this. Let me reiterate my commitment to this House and to the population that whether it is this case or any other case, there is going to be no cover-up, and those who are involved will have to answer for their actions. Mr. Speaker, sir, the opposition is saying that this budget is one which is rejected by all. Syndicats, employeurs, professionnels, et surtout les économistes. Well, first of all, this is clearly untrue. But yes, there are criticisms. There are adverse comments. There are some people who are not happy with some measures of the budget. Some of them are happy with other measures of the budget also. But let us be clear that this budget has been well received by most. Let me again, just as an example, I will quote the Secretary General of the Mauritius Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who is also an economist. I quote, ce budget contient énormément de mesures qui permettront la relance de l'économie et la préservation de l'emploi. Et ce, tout en engageant le pays dans des réformes structurelles courageuses qui assureront une mise en œuvre efficace de la stratégie annoncée. Fin de citation. As far as I know, this gentleman, he is not a member of any party represented in government. He's not a friend of ours. He's an independent person. But let me quote a political analyst, well known, Lindsay Rivière. What did he say on the budget? I quote, Finance Minister Ranganaden Padayachi's first budget on Thursday, June 4th, was always meant to be a complex and difficult balancing act addressing multiple issues. Goes on to say a number of other things, but let me quote what is relevant for today. He goes on to say, the finance minister has tackled these challenges with a generally clear vision and a reasonably good mix of new policies and initiatives. His budget is thus likely to revive growth. End of quote. And most importantly, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have gathered feedback from people generally of all walks of life, and I must say that the budget has been welcomed by not everybody, but a majority of the population, as it is a budget which looks at the urgencies of the population, their needs, and their livelihoods. Mr. Speaker, sir, the 2020-2021 budget not only attends to the immediate urgencies of our economy, but also prepares for the future of Mauritius. In spite the major economic setback leading to declining government revenue and greater pressures on government expenditure, this budget focuses on preserving livelihood and continuing on the path of greater inclusiveness and sustainability. We are not letting the current difficulties blur our vision of a more prosperous, inclusive, and greener Mauritius in the future. This government, as borne out by the 2020-21 budget, is and will always be committed to its vision of a better and more modern tomorrow for all our citizens. It is now for all of us as a nation to play our part so that we stay on track towards our vision. To conclude, Mr. Speaker, sir, let me congratulate. Normally we start with that, but I would like to conclude because, we have been working together on a number of issues, and having been also myself a Minister of Finance, having presented so many budgets, I know how difficult the task is. In normal times, how difficult it is. Now, can you imagine in what situation we are, in what situation the world is facing? The uncertainties ahead. And I've seen in the person of the Minister of Finance something that probably we have in common, very cool, prêt à faire face à la situation, having come up with bold measures, and let us work together to make it successful. Thank you.
Honourable members, I will break for 30 minutes.